First of all, I think 1953 overthrow of Mossadegh was the greatest contribution the United States has done to any country, but that's just me. But what we need to do to stop fundamentalist Islam is democratization, democratization, and democratization. We need people to have the opportunity to get educated. And under fundamentalist Islamic regimes, they don't have that opportunity. Many things went wrong with Iraq and Afghanistan war, but the fact is that women got to go to school in Afghanistan. People got to get education not free of narrative, free of propaganda in Iraq. What went wrong in Iraq was that liberation turned into occupation. That's when Iraqis turned against the United States. If we had not abandoned the mission of liberation for the sake of occupation, Iraqis would have never turned against us. Second thing that went wrong in Iraq was leaving Iraq when it was not ready to defend itself. Third thing that went wrong with Iraq was not helping Syrians who were fighting for freedom against Bashar al-Assad. The matter of fact is, Islamic State controls a large portion of Iraq, but it was born in Syria. It got momentum. I tried to fight the revolution. Needless to say that I failed. But I tried to, and we were desperate. We were looking for somebody who could help us, who could arm us, who could lead us, and we didn't have that person. When you're that desperate, you don't care who that person is, you just follow. And that's what happened with the Islamic State. The Free Syrian Army, the fighters, at some point they stopped caring who the powerful person is, as long as they can overthrow Assad. There was a obsession with overthrowing Assad to a point that they stopped caring who the Islamic State is. They came to that realization when it was too late. Many things went wrong in Iraq and Afghanistan, but the cause of liberation, the cause of freedom agenda, the cause of liberalization was never wrong. It was never unjust.
As a result of backing the rebels, because they wanted, and just to add on to my brother's point, they wanted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad so much that they created ISIS. ISIS was created, unfortunately, by the West because they were so absorbed and so focused on getting Bashar al-Assad out of the way that they created a bigger enemy. And so you say to yourselves right now, how did ISIS become so strong? Where are they getting their weapons? Where are they getting their funding? Mistakes were made. The biggest mistake was, and I apologize to have to say this, I know there might be a lot of, I personally love President Bush myself, but a lot of mistakes were made. President Bush went into Iraq not understanding Islam, not understanding that there were many interpretations of Islam, some of which are pure as we see them right now. ISIS is doing the world a favor. It is splitting the world between the good and evil. ISIS is showing one form of Islam that will not stop. This form of Islam tells a man he can rape an infidel over and over and over again and enslave her. It is written in their interpretation of Islam. So I say to you, if we had no knowledge, and the Bible, which I believe in, says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. That is exactly where we are. As a result of lack of knowledge, not knowing who we are putting the arms in the hands of what people. And the people that were been fighting, and again, I'm sorry, I have with the deepest respect for my panel brothers here, but the Christians in the Middle East have been fighting the democratic war. What little democracy there remains, take it from the First World War to the Second World War. We fought with the English against the Islamization of Iraq, of Iran, of Syria, of all that in that region, of Turkey. We fought alongside of the French. We fought alongside the Russians, but they all deserted the true allies in that region and left it to what it is right now, which is nothing more than a den of demonic thieves.
Yes.
That is the reason we are where we are.
Yes.
What I want to add is, first of all, I agree with my brother here because he's right. We are responsible for the riot, not directly, not intentionally, not consciously, but we are responsible for the rise of Taliban. The mistake the United States made, in my opinion, and by no means I consider myself an expert, but it was that we put communism against any alternative. What we should have done was to put democracy, to put freedom, ideals that were against, that communists were against, and they told us so, against communism. Had we supported real freedom fighters, not false freedom fighters, we would have never got here where we are today. And what we need to do today is, because people are not stupid, people see that everywhere. People see that we don't say to tolerate oppressionists, but we do. What we need to do is to stop engaging rogue actors. We need to stop engaging countries and regimes that oppress their own people. And that's when America is gonna be popular and loved in the Middle East and everywhere. Once they see that we really stand by freedom lovers and not oppressive regimes.
I'd like to add I think this is a very important topic, and since this is a Republican women's group, I'd like to urge you strongly to consider this. Both the speakers are correct in terms of their what they've identified as a problem, and also the ideological goal that we should have. There is an evil in that part of the world, and that evil, even Muslims are recognizing this is not what they want. There's still going to be an issue with their religion as such, but this is not most of them would want. But, you know, I once heard a joke that, you know, if you want basically Republicans to do something, which is big government, you just make an issue of national security and they'll do it. You make environmental and national security issue and they'll probably start funding it as well too. You make an argument that maybe Chinese are more healthy than Americans as a national security issue and they'll all support Obamacare. So we have to realize our government is not a monolith. It is, especially in a democracy, and especially the kind of influences we have over here. So the goal is to democratize the Middle East. The goal is to liberalize the Middle East, to make it pro-Western, have the right values, and there are right values and there are wrong values. And they have, even their moderates have relatively wrong values, more wrong values than we do. How do we do that? Look at what we did during the, under Wilson, Woodrow Wilson, and the Cold War, and look what we did with the whole, you know, under Bush. To say that these people did not understand what was going on in the Middle East, to assume that there were not other influences within the US government. Right now, the biggest reason that we, by the way, left Iraq, that's to be clear, because communist rise in the last year of Bush's administration, we have signed a status of forces agreement with Iraq, saying that by 2012, if they don't want us over there, we will have to leave. That was a treaty we signed with them. We had to abide by them. Obama happily did this. And of course, he's a master politician. To assume that, look at the Bismarckian play he's doing. We conceded Crimea to Russia because we had no, I mean, most of the population was Russian, and of course, most of them, they had their naval bases over there. Unless you want to go to war with Russia, that was a foregone conclusion. But with the crisis that Putin has started in Ukraine, the way that America has sort of handled the foreign policy, the Western Europe is firmly within the alliance with the United States back again. There is no doubt left in Western Europe right now that if they want to stand against Russia, they will have to side with the United States. Likewise, we are back in the Middle East now, and why? Because of ISIS, Iran wants the United States to be in Iraq. Because if Iranians get in there to protect the Shiite areas, the Saudis have made it very clear, who have also funded ISIS, by the way, that they will get in there. And of course, there's the Turks who basically don't want the Kurds to get their own freedom. So you have Turkey, Arabia, and Iran, all of them basically begging Russia to come in. We have a controlled chaos in that region. We can take out ISIS anytime we want to. Perhaps we're not doing it because there is a somewhat of a consensus on the top, on both sides, on left and right, Republican and Democratic. My last comment is this is actually in the Machiavellian terms in America's benefit, what's happening right now. Again, purely Machiavellian, not in moral terms. If you look at how the wars are played, we have many interests in this country, not just one. So the goals are good, but think of what the progressives do. You know, when the education starts failing, the healthcare starts failing, they say, well, let's throw the government, you know, they have great ideas, and I don't think any of us disagree with the ideals of excellent education, excellent healthcare, good environment. These are all lofty goals. But what is the problem? What is a conservative say in terms of Edmund Burke's, you know, ideas? Well, there is a part of human nature. I mean, who are we putting in charge over here? What are the consequences of this? As Christians, I would like to remind you one thing, that even though the road is difficult, look at what happened to Christianity at the end of Jesus' his crucifixion and then his resurrection. There was merely 12 disciples. They didn't go conquer the world. They didn't take the armies out and take over, and they were persecuted. There were incidences where women, Christians, were put in these gladiatorial arenas, and they were burned, or they were eaten alive by lions, and they professed their faith. Within 300 years, Roman Empire became Christian. So there is a long road, and as Dr. King once said, the moral arc of the universe does tend, it's a long one, but I'm paraphrasing it, but it turns towards righteousness. If we are patient, if we fight the battle, as we're doing right now, rhetorically, we do bolster our defenses, but just get out of their way themselves. Europe had to go through a bloody battle. Christianity had to find its own soul. Christianity one time was also becoming a political religion against what Christian teachings are. And perhaps Islam will find the same thing.
Thank you very much. I got about time. One more question here. Which one do I choose? Okay, I'll pick the last one on my list here. Any of you and all of you, does Islam allow free will?
I've actually studied this a lot under Islam. The answer is, of course, yes and no, as in Christianity. Most Muslims are what we'll call, very few Muslims are fatalists in the technical sense of the word. Most of them are compatibilists. That is, of course, I presume everybody over here understands compatibilism. Well, basically, the idea is that God knows the future, but you still have a choice. To me, of course, this idea is a sort of a paradoxical, or it's a contradiction in terms, because God's foreknowledge, if there is somebody, anybody, any being that can have an absolute 100% foreknowledge of facts of the future, then you have an illusion of free will. You don't exactly have free will. Within Christianity, there's been a strong thrust towards the betraying free will, as it's called, where you have choice. It assumes a different version of omniscience, where God's knowledge of the past is perfect, obviously, but for the future, it is, for lack of a term, probabilistic. In Islam also, you had, especially the Mu'tazila I mentioned, there was a thrust towards, in Arabic the terms are Jabr wal Qadr. Jabr means force, that's the determinism, and Qadr means power, which usually implies power of God, but in this case implies power to man, or the idea of libertarian free will, which again assumes, among the rationalist theologians I mentioned back then, a sense of indeterminacy in the future, which necessitates God's lack of 100% knowledge of the future, which again became a problem with Islam too, as in Christianity, because it violates our traditional understanding of within monotheism of what omniscience actually means. So yes, is it possible in Islam to actually have free will, libertarian free will? I would say there was a very strong tradition at one time. It is no longer. Most Muslims today, Sunni and Shias, are compatibilists, like I would say most Christians are. So that ends.
On the last question, I wanted to bash President Obama to make you happy, but I didn't get the opportunity. But it's subject to interpretation, in my opinion. And there is an interpretation in Islam that says women have to even cover their eyes, and there's an interpretation that, although rare, that women even don't have to cover their heads. So it's very much subject to interpretation. On my interpretation, I don't believe that that's true. In Islam, everybody is an Abdullah, which means slave of Allah. And when you're a slave, you don't get to have free will. Islam is a combination of Quran and Hadith and traditions or Sunnah.